us this afternoon. She's traveling from Los Angeles to talk about her work with us. And Alika received her MFA and her bachelor's both at CCA in San Francisco. Cooper has exhibited at Knight Gallery in LA, Eleanor Harwood Gallery in San Francisco, and Tracy Williams in New York. She has exhibited at Hamish Morrison Gallery in Berlin and numerous other exhibition spaces. Her work has been reviewed in Art Forum magazine, Flash Art International, LA Weekly, the Huffington Post.
Thank you. I'm going to start out with just a couple influences at the beginning, or artists that I think made an impact on me over the years. This is a painting by Gwen John. She's Welsh. She was born in Wales in the late 1800s. Oh, okay. Is this working? Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. This is Gwen John. She was a painter in, she studied at Leeds School of Art in London at a time where there wasn't very many female painters. I chose 3 artists that are all female artists that were, their work was focused on the female body or representing female body. A lot of them are just kind of these really quiet figure studies in domestic interiors. This is Vanessa Beecroft. She is Italian. She's born in 1967, I believe. I don't know a ton about her work, but I remember it having a really big impact on me when I was in college. They're basically like live events that she organizes where there's live models standing nude or in lingerie, standing in high heels, and it kind of sets up this very forced, voyeuristic situation for the audience. And this is the third one, Imogene Cunningham. She's a pretty famous photographer. I had always seen her photos in museums of plants, but I didn't realize that she had done nudes until recently, and I was very happy to discover them. She then I ended up reading a lot about her, and there's a lot of quotes from her, and she seemed like quite a character. She said that the reason that she focused on the plant photographs for so long is because she had 3 small children and was sort of stuck at home for several years, and then when the children grew up, then she started going back to doing nude photos. So she did a lot of these kind of architectural, abstract, kind of minimal nude portraits. This one is titled Triangles. I don't know, I was attracted to how, the abstraction and how they kind of envelope the composition. Okay. So this is, the next slides are from a solo exhibition I had in San Francisco in 2011. It was a major kind of breaking point in my work because I had been drawing and painting for 10 or 15 years, and did painting in undergrad and graduate school, and for 3 or 4 years afterwards, and was just feeling, frustrated with the limitations of what I was doing, and felt like I was repeating myself, and then I was just sort of messing around, and I was at my aunt's house. My mother and my aunts, they all are quilters, and I grew up in kind of a crafting atmosphere because of my mom and her sisters, but I never really got into the whole quilting aesthetic, but I was just sort of messing around, and I thought, oh, well, I'll make one too, and so I just started kind of cutting fabric and setting it down, like putting it down, just using fabric glue very crudely. The first one was a portrait of Grace Jones, but after making a couple of them, my mother and my aunt started kind of humoring me and be like, oh, why don't you use this heat and bond iron adhesive stuff? So I started ironing them so that they were much more plush and graphic, and then so that's how this body of work started. This is one of the, I think it was like the fifth or sixth one I made, but this one is actually a quilt, and it's based on a Versailles photograph. He did a whole series of prostitutes and nightlife in Paris in like the 20s and 30s. So this one is titled Ditch. This one's also based on a Versailles photograph. This one I think this is the first one that after I made the sort of fabric collage, I stretched it over a stretcher bar and started working on it that way. I think at this point I was still just like really trying to figure out what I was doing. I'd never really worked in collage before, so I was basically trying to translate drawing into collage. This is from like a photo of like a behind a woman's back, kind of either stepping in or out of a bathtub from like a top view. I believe this one's titled Curtain. This is also from a Versailles photograph. In my previous work, when I was painting, I was doing portraits of kind of like Hollywood actresses before they became famous when they were quite young, but they kind of before they became super iconic. So also when I shifted to fabric work, I started looking at photographers rather than the photographers were more iconic than the subject. And just started looking at photographers. I got really obsessed with Versailles and just started looking at contemporaries from that time period, and kind of was teaching myself the history of photography in a way, you know, through my own tangent. This is like two gymnasts or ballet girls kind of doing exercises, but the way I was kind of translating it kind of made them, I don't know, it looks like to me like she's like kind of a ghost doing some kind of flip in the air. This one is titled Balance. So I was looking at these photographs and I was trying to think of different ways to sort of manipulate the composition. So these were two ballet girls in the photograph who were kind of doing these baton exercises, but I sort of collapsed them into themselves to sort of create this other narrative where, I don't know, to me it looks like she's like measuring her or like helping her fit into a costume or consoling her, or I don't know what. This is based off a Heinz Hayjack Kalka photo. So when I started these, I was looking at a lot of male photographers who were, their main subject was, you know, like nudes or, you know, females. This is like a double nude that were sort of back to back. I was experimenting a lot with the types of textiles I was using. I was starting to use more like upholstery fabrics and like dress fabrics, and not just use like simple cottons. This is based on I think this one is titled Cherried. It's based on a Helmut Newton photograph, but it's pretty, it's like very zoomed in and cropped. It's from a woman who's sort of like back floating in a swimming pool. I got really obsessed with Helmut Newton and collected a lot of his books, and he was starting to put the images I was looking at into categories, and there was all these pool photos of women in pools, and I particularly got very stuck on these like back float images. This is another swimming pool one. It's very abstract. It's It's like it's a torso. Like the top part is like supposed to be like the neck, and then I don't know. That was that was the most abstract one I had done so far, and so it seemed really different to me at the time. This is like I believe this one's titled Backbend. It's also based on a helmet noon photograph, but closely zoomed in and cropped. It's kind of like a yoga position or something. I was like finding my materials. I started going to I got into looking at these very kind of cheaply made sort of domestic fabrics, like going to Walmart and places like that, or just very generic fabric stores. Like this part that makes up the pubic hairs, it's like a Thomas Kincaid apron scene of like a Christmas cabin or something with snow on trees. This is like I think this is another version of the back float figure, but very simplified. It's kind of very kind of abstracted. These look really crude to me now, but I was really just kind of sorting out the technique and what I was doing. Is trying to. I think I was also I was really liberated by working with collage at how, I don't know, abstract I could make them in a way that I wasn't free to do when I was just drawing and painting with paint. This is another. This is based on a helmet nude photo of a woman who's nude on top of a building, like talking on the phone in high heels. But I sort of, I don't know, cropped the bottom half. Kind of accentuated her tan line, which I thought was pretty funny. This one is titled Piggyback. It's like a woman, a figure of a woman on a man's back, like on top of his shoulders. And this like Speedo material is again that like Thomas Kincaid apron print. There were these series of photographs that were like people on the beach in like I think probably like France or some European beach, like some kind of festival. This is another one from that series. It's like women dancing on some kind of bandstand at the beach. But this is like a really tiny detail from a photograph of just like the feet. I was really like experimenting with materials like this, like gold leg. I think is like this really sheer kind of dress fabric material, and this like weird kind of gold fabric in the background is like a really kind of gaudy upholstery fabric with this kind of strange plasticky texture to it. This is the install shot from that show. It was like the biggest crisis for me ever as an artist was hanging the show because I was so terrified of like even showing these fabric collage works because it seemed like such a big break in my work from painting, and I was just having a total identity crisis over it. But it went fine. So this show just had that one quilt in it, and then I continued to wrap them around canvas and work, just iron the pieces straight onto the canvas. The next show, there's in the slides there's 4 shows. This is the second show. This was about a year later. This is the show at Night Gallery at the original space in LA, which was only open at night and had black walls, and the only lighting was very minimal spotlightings on the work. which is a very unusual way to exhibit your work. So I had that in mind the whole time I was working on the show, and how to sort of deal with that. So I was kind of sensitive to like the palette, and kind of like using maybe more sensitive to the contrasts I was using. Having a year to sort of develop the technique I was using with the iron, I able to do a lot more layering and more complicated compositions. This is like a woman holding a photograph of herself when she's nude in the same position as she is dressed. It's based on a helmet nude photo, but it's pretty manipulated. I started taking different pieces from different photographs and sort of collaging the photographs I was referencing, and then collaging the collage. It's sort of hard to tell in the photograph, but the actual areas where they're filled in with the same fabric are many like layered pieces of kind of the same fabric, so it kind of creates this optical effect of throwing off the pattern that's the original pattern in the fabric. This one is titled Red Hair Piece. This is based on a Helmut Newton photo also. It was a model, and she had this very large ornament hanging in front of her face, but I was experimenting with how to manipulate the images I was looking at, so I was trying out different strategies to alter them. So in this case, I just sort of removed the ornament and like made up an ornament of like this kind of big feather hat behind her. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know. I feel like it makes it kind of look like a Victorian woman or something. I was really focused on trying to develop the rendering more with collage, just like more sort of shadow and detail, which more fine details with the scissors and like subtle layers. This one is titled Grass Skirt. This is based on a Versailles photograph of kind of like cabaret dancers, kind of behind the scenes, like waiting to go on stage, and cabaret theater workers. They're kind of like in a huddle, but I took the photograph and I took them, all the figures out, and put them in different positions, so they're all kind of looking in different directions than they would be naturally, just to sort of trip up the way I was making a composition. The figure with the kind of moire going on it is in the middle. The light brown material is like this grosgrain fabric, ribbon fabric I found when I was searching for fabric stores around like Greater LA. But I wish I could find more of it because it was really optical, but it's hard to find more of it. This one is titled Slipknot. It's based on a Man Ray photograph. I guess I was very obsessed with the materials I was using when I was making these. I found this like it looked like the kind of fabric for like like a high school dance or prom dress. I'm sorry, or some. It had these like little metal studs in it and like gradient fabric, which was really fun to use, as it kind of trips up the depth automatically. I changed the photograph because it was a marble torso that was sort of wrapped all with this twine all around it, but I used this gold kind of. I only had put 2 lines across her, and this gold kind of trim fabric kind of makes her look like a Christmas present, or maybe crisscrossed out, or like negated or wrapped. This one's titled The Bocock. After looking at all these really like intense images of bodies. I was feeling, I think I was wrapping up, getting ready for the show, and I was feeling freaked out about looking at so many of these types of images. So I was trying to find an image of a male body to use, and I could not find one that was like kind of sexualized or objectified in the same way, or just had this type of voyeuristic edge to it. And so Helmut Newton used all these kind of like prosthetics and things. And this is as close as I got, is finding something sort of phallic to put in an image. So I chose this one. She's sort of holding a hose up to her body. This one is titled Cues. It's just another version of the very first one, sort of a study for that one. This one is titled Fur Rug. I guess I was very deep into Helmut Newton this time, and I was taking the images, I was making all these photocopies and sort of cutting them out and putting them in different settings, even taking top of a body and a bottom of a body and sort of collaging it in a photo collage, and then doing a fabric collage of that collage. This one's titled Vignette. I took an image of a woman sort of bending over like this, and then I did a reverse photocopy of it, so she's sort of mirroring herself, and used that as the sort of sketch. This one's titled Overarch. This is a sort of similar like pose from that one. This one has all the black parts are kind of the shiny fabric that's used in like dress lining, like jacket, suit linings, or like skirt linings fabric. So it has all this like different type of sheen, and as it's built up, the sheen like hits the light in different ways. These are the installation shots. Because they're made out of fabric, they're very matte already, even in like a brightly lit room. So I think I was very, very focused on making these kind of high contrast, or using black in a way that would make it more high contrast that I would usually be concerned about. This is the first slide from the show I had in New York about 6 months ago. I was really happy to not be consumed with how to hang work in a dark space, so I was happy to use a totally new palette, and it was using these brighter colors, and I was trying to set a tone for like a new palette. So I was using a lot of like bright oranges and greens and blues. This one is titled Chain. It's based on a Helmut Newton photo, but it zoomed in, and it sort of changed orientation from horizontal to vertical. This one is titled Viewfinder. In the original image, the model is looking at a mirror, and her face is looking back from the mirror at the photographer, while there's this kind of vast landscape in front of her through a mirror that she doesn't kind of have access to. So I removed the mirror image so she can look through the viewfinder out into the landscape. This one's titled Strong Arm. For this show, I was focused on, I was trying to set up one of the rules was I was trying to look at body types, or kind of more focused on the muscles, or like kind of like sturdy body parts. This one is titled Model, but it's a play on words with Lisette Modell, who's the photographer. She was the first photographer I was looking at a lot of female photographers, but I was having a hard time finding the one that I thought was right. And at the time, it seemed like a big deal to switch from like the male gaze to the female gaze. Now that seems like perfectly great, but at the time, it seemed like a jump. So I had to force myself to work with this image, but then it was wonderful. She took these photographs of sort of tourists on the beach in New York and in Europe. This is like I sort of zoomed in and it changed orientation again. So it kind of manipulates the pose, so it's more of like almost like a glamour pose in my mind, anyways. Okay. This was titled Bulb. It's based on a Man Ray photograph. This one, I think I pushed the most detail I had before as far as like little layers, and it's kind of a difficult composition. It's a reflection of a light bulb canister of the nude that the photographer is looking at. So the center circle is like a light bulb, and the greater circle is a bulb canister. And then, then it's all those sort of reflections, trying to sort out how to do that, and it still actually come across in collage was it's difficult to pull off for me. This one's titled Screen. It's another version of the one where she's holding the image in front of her face at the night gallery show, but I took her hands out and I took the image apart, so it's just kind of this moire screen that's sort of, I don't know, obliterating the top part of her head. This one's titled Magazine. This is based on a Helmut Newton photo also. It's a woman reclining on a couch, and in the original photo, Cindy Crawford is climbing on top of her and smothering her with a photo of Cindy Crawford's face. But I took Cindy Crawford out, and I took Cindy Crawford's face out of it, so it just kind of looks like a newspaper or a bag on her head. To me, it almost people found it very kind of dark and disturbing. I thought it was funny. I thought it kind of looked like one of those like reflective things that people put on at the beach to like get more sun, or I don't know what those are called. This was a small study for the larger Modell beach woman. I guess through the show, I got more adept at sort of translating the photographs, and I was happy about that, but also found it problematic. It was sort of like a new problem. This is based on a Imogene Cunningham photo. This one, I don't know, sometimes people can see it or they can't see it at all, but I put the image at the beginning, so that helps. But it's like a woman crouching over in this sort of negative space that's in between her arms and legs and her torso. I feel like this is the most like optically confusing piece I had made in a while, and I was curious about what I could do with that, and I was also into the idea of like how that relates to quilting and how sort of like the optical effects and attributes of that in quilting. So that was kind of an epiphany I had when I made this piece. This one's titled Tableau. It's based on an Otto Umber photo. It's just like a couple at a diner, sort of from a Fish Islands perspective, from the diner table. But I sort of removed all the kind of details that explain the situation. So it's just sort of this couple interfacing. This is the install shots This show is titled Twin Lens. Sorry. I think I was focused more on like the framing or like the composition of the actual composition rather than going in and trying to manipulate it somehow as I was before. And also just trying to translate the photos in with more rational space. And that brings me to the fourth show. This show is titled The Disguised Edge, and it was in Toronto, Canada. It was 2 months ago. So after the New York show, I was trying to come up with a new set of problems or how to deal with the problems I discovered while making that work. And so I set out with like two different parameters for the shows. That I wanted to choose images where like figures were sort of blending or two figures were joining in some way. And I also wanted to try to think of different ways to reference quilting or like pattern or the optical attributes of quilting. Well, this was the first one. It's titled In Fact a Mask. It's from like a double exposure, like of a silhouette of a man and a silhouette of a woman sort of on top of each other. This one's titled His Image is Sealed. I liked how like sort of unflattering like this kind of like squashed bodies were in this embrace, and how you can't necessarily tell which gender they are because they're so squashed into each other. This one is titled In Every Place. I was trying to think of ways to use quilting language in a piece, and so when I tried to make an abstract background, which I hadn't done before, and in her hair I sort of was trying to make it more piecemeal in the way like maybe an abstract quilt would be, and I was really happy with that. And so for the next piece I decided that I really wanted to make a piece that was literally about quilting. So I collect all these photos. So this is photos of women on just like from the internet or wherever, from my mom and my aunts, of after they finish a quilt, they sort of show it, they hold it up and take a photo of it. But when I finished this piece, I liked how it was kind of like a blank canvas that she was holding up, or like a place to project upon, more than it necessarily being a quilt. Or the next piece I did for that show, I decided to actually put quilt pattern design into it, which seemed just like completely nuts to me at the time. Then I put the figurative composition on top of it and tried to sort of blend it in, kind of as you would in like applique, or sort of incorporating like an image or symbol into a quilt. This image is based on a Germaine Kroll photograph. There's kind of these women sort of wandering towards each other in a pond. The next piece, I decided I should try to incorporate the pattern more fully into the composition. So I covered the entire surface in a kind of quilt pattern, and then incorporated the image into it, sort of keeping to the pattern symmetrically, but also opposing it enough so you could see the original pattern, but also going against it to kind of create this lady's portrait. It's hard to, I don't know how easy it is to see. Some people can see it right away, and other people can't see it at all because it's too optically confusing. This one is titled Unfixed. In response to the last one, I first started out with the drawing and then filled the drawing, the silhouette, with the quilt pattern. So basically the opposite process to see what would happen when I did that. And it made the figure so fixed, whereas in the one before, it was almost like some like trippy disco light was on her face and she was free. But this one, it's like statuetted down because of the patterning. This one is titled Concentric. I was just trying to find images of figures sort of coming together or blending. And I tried to use this gradient fabric for the first time. And then I started with the quilting pattern in the background and then put the figures on top. I didn't realize because of the gradient how much like depth it would create, and it's almost obliterated. It just looks like background noise. But it was interesting how that happened. I liked how those effects happened, which was a total surprise to me. So I tried to do another one with. So I tried to do one with a larger pattern in the background, and where they're more kind of like solemnly joining. And then these are the install shots. So I discovered kind of through making these works of like how to incorporate quilt patterns, and got really excited by that. And I'm going to continue researching quilting patterns and kind of getting more into that. Whereas before I was using it kind of without thinking about it too much about like the actual techniques in quilting. So that has been really nice to work with. So that's my last slide.
Questions for Alika? You can just raise your hand.
I wanted to know if I could see slide hand where it's red and grass and torso section that might be hard for people to see at first.
I'm sorry, which one?
Like, I think from the series before this.
This one? This one?
Yeah, I just want to see it again.
Oh.
Really amazing.
Oh. Yeah. It just keeps taking longer and longer because they just kind of keep getting more small pieces and more layers and just more labor is going into them. So at first they were like really sketchy, so I could do it, in a couple hours. But now it could take 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
I'm curious about you mentioned the problematic aspect of translating the fabric pieces from the photographs and how you become more adept at making those translations, and how you wanted to push against that a little bit. And I'm kind of wondering if our students are confused by that idea of like acquiring the skill set, but then that becomes problematic to the piece. And so I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say. So when the most recent show that has like when I was talking about the quilt patterns, I feel like that was a way to sort of make it more difficult or confuse the composition more for myself, or it's kind of another layer of, I don't know, ambiguity to it.
Great.